anybody can Google this. Just Google UTM and Google Analytics, the letters UTM and Google Analytics. You'll see a million videos and blog posts about how to use them. But these are things that will tag and identify the traffic source. So this is how I would know, for example, if you clicked on one of my emails and then purchased, let's say, the Measurement Marketing Academy from us, I would know that particular email caused that sale because I have that as the sale is a result I'm measuring for. And the traffic would identify you as coming from a specific email in our autoresponder, as an example. So now I can see, okay, if that is working or not. So I've got my traffic and my results. And then it's just connecting it together in a way that tells a natural story.
Want to cause no problems. I just want to live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters. We know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you want to talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.
If my opt-in rate is between 30 and 40%, well, everything's probably okay in that case. If it's cold traffic, let's just scale that traffic and take that action to try to get more eyeballs to the opt-in because it seems to be working. If the opt-in is higher than 50 or 55% and it's cold traffic, I would suggest that maybe that traffic isn't scaling properly and you're too warm. You're maybe it's a retargeting audience or something like that. And maybe the job is scale it out because it can be true that a conversion rate is too high. And so now I've got my plan. I know what questions I'm trying to answer. Let's say, for example, about the opt-in. I know the information I'm going to collect. I already know the actions I'm going to take when I see the number, right? When I get my answer, what my opt-in rate is going to be. Then you go into your build. So that's the first step is plan. We do the KIA, questions, information, actions. Then you build. This is where you do go into a tool like Google Analytics. So the first thing might be, and I mentioned that one just because it's free and everybody has access, but it doesn't really matter what tool you use. But the first step to the build is you always focus on the results. And so you go to whatever your tool is, again, using Google Analytics as an example, and you make sure that that platform is measuring for the specific result you're trying to achieve. So in this case, it might be opt-in rate. So you're like, cool, I'm going to make sure when somebody opts in, when they become a lead, I'm measuring for that. So set up a goal in Universal Analytics, or it'd be what they call conversion event in Google Analytics 4. But whatever it is, it's got to know like, okay, this is a milestone thing that I'm supposed to be measuring for, right? So you set that up. Then you make sure that your traffic is properly identified. Right? And Google, anybody can Google this. Just Google UTM and Google Analytics, the letters UTM and Google Analytics. You'll see a million videos and blog posts about how to use them. But these are things that will tag and identify the traffic source. So this is how I would know, for example, if you clicked on one of my emails and then purchased, let's say, the Measurement Marketing Academy from us, I would know that particular email caused that sale because I have that as the sale is a result I'm measuring for. And the traffic would identify you as coming from a specific email in our autoresponder, as an example. So now I can see, okay, if that is working or not. So I've got my traffic and my results. And then it's just connecting it together in a way that tells a natural story. And this is where you do have to learn your tools a little bit. So with Google Analytics, something like cross-domain measurement might come into play. And this is where you go back to attribution, right? Basically making sure that the traffic source that started that visit on your site in the first place, what they call a session, when it started that visit in the first place, all the stuff that happened in that visit, that traffic source should get credit for, right? So all the pages that you saw, all the buttons you clicked, all the results that you achieved that you're measuring for, everything should be associated to that traffic source. And as long as that's happening, you will very likely see a pretty quick, easy to read natural story. When I set results, the secret sauce to results is what we call ACE. So you would set up a goal for when they're aware of the customer journey you want them to be aware of, a goal when they've completed that customer journey, and a goal when they've engaged along the way. Like, so for our example, with the Measurement Marketing Academy, it might be when they see the offer page for the Measurement Marketing Academy. That's a goal we have that fires. So now I know that you are aware of this product we have called the Measurement Marketing Academy. So then when you purchase the Measurement Marketing Academy, it's another goal, right? When you see the thank you page, cool. Now I know you've completed that journey that is to acquire Measurement Marketing Academy members, right? The engagement might be sees the cart, right? Which is like the middle step. So what's cool about that is measuring for those 3 levels of results when you set up your goals, right? And setting up your traffic, make sure this traffic is identified. When you come into then looking for the story, you start to see things like, okay, well, Google Organic is really good at creating awareness, right? It's really good at making people aware of the Measurement Marketing Academy, like in our case. Facebook is really good about getting them to engage and become a lead. And email is really good at getting them to actually complete that Measurement Marketing Academy journey. So now I understand as a marketer, I need to use Google Organic to achieve this specific result. I need to use Facebook to achieve this specific result. I use emails to achieve this specific result. And now I'm coordinating all my traffic sources together. So they're all combining using their superpowers, because they all have their own little personality traits. They're all combining their superpowers to move somebody from who are you to, oh, please, can I buy again? Right. And that's what we all want as marketers, is to be able to sell our products and services. So those are kind of the two steps to that. Planning everything out, right? Questions, information, actions. Then you build it out using the results, the traffic, and then reading for the story. And then you just use your measurement platform to guide your marketing. And that's what we call the launch, where essentially you listen for the conversation, similar to what I just said, where you can say, oh, cool. Now I'm starting to see that there's trends and patterns. More Google organic traffic tends to be aware, but Google organic traffic may not be great at closing the deal, but that's okay, because it's really good at making people aware. So let's create more stuff to make them, to get more people aware, because they got to be somewhere in the journey, right? They got to start somewhere. Awareness is a good thing to start with. And then you coordinate it. So you're looking for trends and patterns when you're listening to stuff. And then you start to forecast. This is the other thing that people don't skip, or that they do skip, excuse me, is the forecasting. And that's where you kind of put yourself on the hook a little bit. And instead of, and it's a big mental shift, but it's an important one. Instead of looking back at your data all the time, which is what most organizations do, you look forward. And instead of saying like, what happened to all the money we spent on Facebook last week, you start saying, here's what's going to happen to the money we're going to spend on Facebook next week. And you say, okay, I'm gonna spend $1,000. That's going to generate, let's say 1,000 clicks, because I expect to be $1 per click, whatever it's going to be. Of those, I'm going to have 30% opt-in. Of those, within 7 days, 10% of those should buy at whatever the average ticket is. That's going to generate this much revenue. And then now you've got a forecast, right? And then you measure against your forecast. And then all of a sudden you will very clearly see where you're hitting the mark and where you're not. So now you instantly know what actions to take, because it's either going to be, hey, you spent $1,000, but you only got 500 people that clicked over. Okay, well, maybe it was a little more expensive. You got to work on the Facebook side of things. Maybe you spent $1,000, you got all 1,000 people to come over, but only 10% opted in, not 30, like you thought it was going to be. Okay, so maybe we work on that part. Maybe everybody opted in, but they didn't close from the email that you thought they were going to within 7 days. Or maybe they did close, but not for that average amount. So but what the cool part is, because you're measuring for all of that, you instantly know where to focus your resources. And as companies, as owners, as marketers, we all have limited resources. Even if we're part of a team, we have limited focus. And the trick is, where do you focus your energy to get the biggest bang for the buck, right? To move the needle the fastest, the furthest, with as few resources as possible, which means you have to focus them. And that process, that whole, what we call the measurement marketing framework, actually symptomatically causes that. Just the fact that you use it will force you to do that, which is kind of the beauty. So again, just to recap it, it's you plan, you build, you launch. When you plan, it's questions, information, the actions you're going to take based upon the answers you get. When you build, you got to make sure that you have the awareness, completion, and engagement goals set up and measuring for the results, those 3 results. You make sure that you're using traffic, what they call the UTM parameters, to identify the traffic. And then you're looking for the story, like which traffic sources are good at awareness, which are good at completing, which are good at engagement. Then you use your system. Now you can actually look at your trends and patterns. You can start to forecast, and then you measure against your forecast so that you know exactly what's working or what's not. And more importantly, what you should do next to fix it. So that's the framework in a nutshell. And it solves so many dilemmas that people have, and it makes the tools immensely more useful. It's very rarely a problem that people don't know how to use the tool. It's that they don't know what to do with the tool, even if they did know how to use it. You know, like just because I teach you how to swing a hammer doesn't mean you're a carpenter. You know what I mean? And people think, oh, I'm just going to learn different hammers then, I guess I should learn how to use a screwdriver. Well, now I'll learn how to use a plane. And it's like, well, that still doesn't make you a carpenter, because you're not learning carpentry. And this is a big shift that's happening, especially in the world of data privacy and everything else that's going on right now, is measurement is becoming a skill that companies realize they don't have. They have analytics, right? They have numbers. They have plenty of numbers. Oh my gosh, big data is the thing, right? Like we have plenty of numbers. We don't need more data. We need more, like, what do I do with the data? And that's where measurement solves that problem. And hence why measurement marketing exists.
I think that's a pretty compelling reason.
It's worked out. We're kind of like the people in between. Like, we're not quite the creative marketers, but we're also not the data analyst, data scientist side of things, right?
Right.
We're the people in the middle who can help you understand, or more importantly, in our case, we teach you how to be that person who can look at a number and go, oh, I know what to do now. Cool. Because I like numbers. Like, let's not mince facts. And I'm a quote unquote numbers person, but I do not want to be in a spreadsheet 12 hours a day. I got more important things to do. So I can come in, look at a dashboard within a minute, like less than a minute for sure. I am out of that dashboard and focused on actions. And more importantly, that's what our marketing department is doing. and their team members part of that. So it's all self-directed. They're listening to the conversation on the users that are happening on our site, and they're going, oh, that conversation is not going the way we want it to. What else can we do to adjust it? And they know exactly where it's not working, so they can focus their resources to improve it. They make changes. A couple of days later, they look at the numbers again and go, oh, cool, now it's back. We have the conversation where we want it. Now let's go find more people. So they already know what actions. Nobody's guessing. Nobody's got any drama. There's no, I think it's a Dan Kennedy term, but it's like random acts of marketing. There's no random acts. Everything's pre-planned and as an expectation. And it just helps build a company, move it forward one step at a time.
Right. Well, yeah. And especially since you're talking about like essentially the customer journey being like cross-platform between like email, Facebook, and website. If you don't know what's happening on each of those individual spots, like you're essentially going to have a team of people that are like changing everything on every platform all the time, in which case you're essentially never going to arrive at a point where it's all working together well, because how would you ever know which part is working well?
That's exactly right. That's exactly, you can't put together a puzzle. Right. That's exactly right. Because you don't know there's a puzzle to put together. Yep. That's 100%.
So do you find that businesses like aren't measuring at all, or is there like a specific part of that like framework that they tend to be overlooking?
They have, they have things activated. Let's say that.
Right.
Most businesses have things activated. They do not have them properly set up in most cases. And I'd say that's 90%. So better than average chance. Wow. Whoever's listening to this, their analytics probably is not telling a natural story. In other words, it's that children's book of ripped up pieces of paper in between the covers. All the information's there, but it's a lot harder than it needs to be to get the story, right? So that's 90% of the locations. The two things people skip, besides just the main steps of planning, which is a big one, is in the planning stage, that action step. People don't do that. They don't role play ahead of time. And that this is happening in your company. If you've ever gotten a report from somebody that you've asked for a report, whether it's a vendor or somebody in your team, and you look at it, you're like, this is great. I have no idea what to do with this. That's how you never thought about actions. You've never asked yourself, what am I going to do if the number's higher than I want it to be, if it's lower than I want it to be, or if it's just right? If you don't know about that, when you see the number, how would you know what to do, right? Because you've never role played it. And the opposite is true. If you've given a report to somebody, maybe you're a vendor, you give it to your client, and you have that client say, hey, I don't know what to do with this. By the way, what's our ROAS on Google Ads? And you're like, oh my gosh, it's right in column 2, section 3, right? And you're like, if you just look at the reports, but they're not going to do that because they also haven't role played. They don't understand this dashboard. They don't understand what you're giving them, and they haven't role played it. So they don't know what to do. But if you role play that with them and say, okay, this spot, if the action is this, and that's why I'm a big believer in putting forecasts, like actual context in the dashboard. So our dashboards don't just say, oh, your opt-in rate's 35%. They say opt-in rate's 35% during whatever the date range is. The expected range would be like, let's say 30 to 40%, right? And then, so there's context. So the user can see that 35% and go like, oh, that's good. But if it goes less than 30, they go, oh, that's bad. And it changes to red, right? And they go, okay, well, I know what I'm going to do because I already thought about the actions, right? So that's the most important first thing I would focus on that I would say most people are missing is that role playing of actions. The second thing is forecasting. Companies don't ever do that. They are really good at looking in their past data all the time, but it's like driving, it's like driving in the rearview mirror, and trying to go forward. It's complicated, It's like you can tell, and I get some of the mindset behind that. Cause like if you let's say you and I were on the boat, right? And we're going down the lake and we got that boat railing, you can turn around and you can tell just by the wake that engine's leaving behind. You can tell kind of how fast you're going because it'd be more waves if we're going really fast, right?
Yeah.
You can tell a lot of stuff. You can tell, how the water's doing, how choppy it is. The only thing you can't tell is where you're going. That is the most important business question to answer. And yet everybody, when they use data, the first thing they do is turn around and look backward all the time. And they're obsessed with trying to figure out why things happened last Tuesday. I am obsessed with what's going to happen next Wednesday. And that's my thing is like, if I can say, okay, next Wednesday, and this is exactly what we do, we'll forecast and say, okay, for example, it might be, okay, we're going to have 100 people come to the Academy page next week. Of those, 10 of them are going to consider, which means they're going to go to the cart. Of those, 30%, let's say, will purchase at an average ticket of whatever the ticket is. That's going to generate this much revenue. Then go. We measure against it. And if we didn't hit it, we're going to know what number we didn't hit. Was it because we didn't get enough people in the first place? Or is it because they didn't actually process the way the machinery, the marketing machinery, in other words, the conversation that we expected to happen, if that conversation didn't happen the way we wanted it to, we're going to know exactly where it went south so that the marketing team can step up and say, okay, I see what it is. Facebook traffic isn't really performing the way that email traffic is. So we have to do a little bit of work on that. Like maybe we have to retarget the audience, or it was colder traffic, or they weren't ready for that message, or whatever the thing is. But it's all because they're marketing forward. They're looking through the windshield and they're going, okay, here's what we're supposed to do. And everything we've learned from our past, which I'm not opposed to looking in the past, but it should feed your future. And most companies forget that. They just keep looking in the past. And that's where I'd say the biggest, there's two things. So the action step gets missed and that forecasting gets missed. Those are the two main keys.
Now, I think that's super exciting because, like the theme of the podcast, the death to vanilla, when people start trying to innovate and do new things, like, how do you know it went over well, right?
Yep.
And so, I mean, there's like real obvious ones, like, oh, like we had a spike in revenue or this or that or something else. But at the end of the day, like if you're doing something risky or you're doing something new or just out of the box, like you still have to be able to like measure how well that really did, especially if it's kind of like outside the traditional norms of what you practice, and being able to like have some sort of, like the framework that you're talking about to be able to measure that is going to, because at the end of the day, if you're doing something innovating, then you're going to have to sell someone on whether or not that worked, right? So if you're a CMO, you're going to have to sell the CEO or the CTO or whatever that this was a good idea, right? Well, how are you going to do that?
Yeah.
Well, by the numbers. Awesome, man. Well, I want to respect our time here and make sure that I don't keep you going for the rest of the day, right?
No
you are
problem,
clearly
man.
passionate about it and excited about it, and I'm excited to have people hear this because if this is such a big miss as you say, and I absolutely believe that it is, then this is going to be really, really important for a lot of people to listen into. So I'm very grateful to be able to have you be able to share this stuff on the podcast, and someone who's so passionate about it as you are. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks.
Yeah, so we'll have the information in the description, but if you could just let people know the best way to reach out to you, wherever you're primarily at, because let's be honest, we all got our favorite platforms.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just let people know.
Exactly. So obviously our website is measurementmarketing.io. So everybody can go there and learn some stuff. I'll give you a couple of other links. One is measurementmarketing.io/YouTube. Obviously shameless plug, but I would subscribe to that channel. So measurementmarketing.io/YouTube will take you to the subscription of that channel. There is a ton of free training there that we're doing on tools. There's strategy thinking for those that are more on the strategic side of things. There's implementation training for those that are more on the implementation side of things. So go to that YouTube channel. And then if you are already like, yeah, I'm into this and I really want to start learning some stuff and playing with some stuff and seeing if the brand makes sense, then I would go to measurementmarketing.io/vanilla. So measurementmarketing.io/vanilla. And what that will do is it'll take you to a page we call the Toolbox membership. It's totally free. You have weekly training that's back there you have access to for free. And there's about 40 some odd tools. There's a tracking toolkit. There's a dashboard planning toolkit. There's all sorts of stuff back there that you can use. It's just our way of helping to build the community. It's pretty easy. So measurementmarketing.io/vanilla.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing all that. That sounds like a bunch of stuff to at least get people exploring and finding out more about it, and hopefully figuring out how that's actually going to fit into what they need to do to get their revenue up, get more customers in the door.
Exactly. That's what we're all here for. Yep. Exactly right.
That's the idea. So awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Appreciate it. For those of you who are listening and or watching, don't forget we've got an audio only version of the podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm, which is actually the host, and a bunch of other places. We'll have it on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, of course. And so thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.
Wanna cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is constant.